Hello and welcome again, Thursday Coach's Corner, where each Thursday, Coach Dave Serrano and myself, we get to talk to college coaches from all levels, all divisions, and what our hope is that we're able to share information that allows parents and student athletes to make educated and informed decisions with regard to the pathway from high school baseball into college athletics and college baseball. And today we're going to talk to what I consider to be the ultimate terrapin, University of Maryland, a student athlete from Maryland High School, DeMatha, in Maryland, and then was a player, a student athlete at the University of Maryland, and a director of baseball operations, an assistant coach, and now head coach at the University of Maryland, Matthew Swope. Matt, thank you for taking the time to join us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
This time of year, we're coming out of the regular season. We're entering into what I consider to be the most exciting time in college baseball. This was your first year as a head coach at your alma mater. Tell us a little bit about what your experience was like and what you're looking to build on from this point forward.
Yeah, well, really didn't know what to expect going into this first year just because, we had 26 new players. So anytime you lose 7 players to the draft and probably one of the best couple teams we've had in the history of the school with that much turnover, you really don't know what to expect. Also, 4 to 5 new staff members. So what I was really trying to do is just maintain status quo. We've worked really hard to build the culture all the way back to Eric Bakich, to John Sheff, to Rob Vaughn, some big time names now in college baseball. So we've worked really hard to establish that culture, but it's a little bit of a difficult challenge when you have 26 new players to make sure that you can implement that in more of a transition and a seamless way. So I was extremely proud of the way we did that. Our new staff, we had a really good young core. We played a lot of young freshmen this season. We started almost 3 freshmen every game, which I don't know if anybody did that in the Big Ten or possibly across the country, that many freshmen. So was really pleased overall. Thought we overachieved for a good part of the season, and we're right really in it. I had a 29 RPI all the way till the last week of the season and had 34 wins, the 6th most in school history. So I would say the transition went really well. We're not satisfied with how it ended up, but really a successful year one, I would say.
A 600 winning percentage, playing in a really what has always been thought of to be predominantly a football conference, but is slowly creeping into the world of big time baseball, the Power Four, as I call it. So obviously, when you're taking over that first year, you're making some changes. And we had Coach Jackson on a month or two ago, and he brought up an interesting topic that we did get some questions on that I was unfamiliar with. And I would love for you to talk. A lot of schools talk about biomechanics. And Coach Jackson brought in a different topic that I would like you to discuss that you feel makes the University of Maryland baseball program unique and different.
Yeah, it's something we've kind of established our entire program around. It's called motor preferences. So essentially what happened was I was studying brain types where there's 16 different type of personality types about 5 years ago. And I did that because I really thought that this day and age you needed to coach the individual and everybody needs to be coached differently. So we were really trying to be specific with how we coach each individual player. So during that time, I was introduced to somebody in France. He kind of got me started on motor preferences and essentially what motor preferences are is it's our unique body language. So, Matt Swope and Walter are completely 2 different movers. They're 2 different people. And we have to coach it that way. And I think we've gotten kind of slavish to the data. We've gotten kind of slavish to maybe some biomechanical ranges, and we were trying to bucket a lot of things. And what you're seeing from that is a lot of injury, a lack of specificity. So what we've done is try to do the opposite of that. So the motor preferences has changed my life. It's changed how we coach, how we hit, how we now pitch with our pitchers, how we lift weights, even to what type of soles we put in the shoes. So the premise for motor preferences is humans either prefer more of their forefeet or their heels, and everything beyond that, from muscle chains and a lot of other things that they use to play baseball or other sports, are predicated on where you prefer the weight in your feet. So there's a lot of things in baseball right now going with torque, like back foot torque and creating more force into the ground but no force into the ground will ever trump your balance and coordination. So if Randy Johnson prefers his 4 feet and you really try to torque him into a ground and get hip drive and low and or stuff like that, it's not going to work for him. His timing, his sequence will be off. He will get hurt. So we've really, and it's so detailed. This would take me hours upon hours to really get into it with you, but it's changed my life. It's one of the most exciting things. I just wrote a book with my other business partner in France, and that's going to come out at the end of the year. And essentially, what it's trying to do is just say there's no one way to do it, and we know that. Anybody that
Right.
has watched baseball or watch other sports, you watch people just run or walk or move, and we all do it differently. So this just brings 10 to 12 categories within motor preferences to specify how the player wants to play baseball. So my job is to kind of change baseball around the player, not say, hey, everybody has to do this. So what we've allowed our players to do is just a little bit more freedom within their capability, and we're trying to optimize, not necessarily maximize the body.
Well, what I find so enlightening about that and encouraging is that I truly feel that we have become kind of this follow mentality of the latest craze, the latest piece of technology, technique, and we really have regressed from the individuality dynamic
Mm-hmm.
of baseball, which for decades is what made it such a great sport. I mean, for every Willie Mays basket catch, you get somebody saying two hands and so forth. So I find that to be really enlightening, and I think it's exciting from a student athlete's perspective to be coached as an individual and developed within your strengths and movements. So I really think that's a separator. When you introduce this, is this something you do during recruiting? Do you wait till the student athletes get on campus? How do you begin to integrate motor preferences with regard to future recruits for the University of Maryland?
Yeah, I've gotten so good at studying it. I can see a lot of the preferences just by seeing them walk or run or video. So I can start to pick pieces out that I already know how they move. So they're great talking points for me when you're recruiting. And essentially, our pitches is like, hey, we have something that no one else does. When I say I'm going to develop you, this is how I'm going to do it. An example would be like in the portal last year, we got Sam Honar, was a first team All Big Ten second baseman. What he was doing at this previous school, he was moving how his body did not want to. So I when I'm looking at that, his numbers were like 260 with 10, and they weren't great. But I'm looking at that differently. Like, wow, if I could just get him to move how his body wants, he hit 16 home runs this year and was first team All Big Ten. So that has nothing to do. It's not a knock on the other school. I'm just simply saying I'm looking at it from a different lens now of if it looks like he's stuck or doing something he doesn't want to do, that allows me to say, oh my goodness, like he has a huge upside in him, whether that's a hitter or pitcher. So it's pretty cool to look at it from a totally different lens like that, as opposed to probably what most coaches are doing. So it definitely gives an advantage recruiting. It gives an advantage from a development standpoint. We have a ton of big leaguers that come in here in the off season that work with us as well that did not go to Maryland. So I think we've just, kind of carved out a really cool niche on the East Coast as far as, hey, every player is going to do different drills. They're going to have different cues. They're going to do different things, and nobody's going to be coached the same.
Well, I think you're going to have another professional ball player this offseason, somebody from my neck of the woods that has my last name. So I'm definitely going to be mentioning this to my youngest son. So,
Would love to see.
one of the dynamics that I really am intrigued about the University of Maryland, you mentioned Eric Bakich, now head coach at Clemson. And, I was a very aggressive follower of Eric as a young coach at Vanderbilt. But I want to talk about Big Ten baseball. And Big Ten baseball now, with the new legislation and new teams coming into the Big Ten, particularly USC and UCLA, the conference is really becoming what I would consider top two, top three league in the country. And when you're out recruiting, do people think Big Ten, they think football, or are they starting to change that thought process when you're out on the recruiting trail during the high school summer?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I was a diehard ACC guy myself. I went to Maryland. I grew up here. You can see the basketball jerseys behind me. It kind of shaped my childhood growing up, not just baseball. So, I was extremely disappointed and most worried about that when we made the switch in 2015. was how was that going to affect us on the regionally and nationally recruiting. And to be honest with you, it really hasn't. Since I've been here, yeah, we've lost out to some guys, but I don't think the conference was a huge deal. So and then obviously when I got in the conference, no, I didn't really realize how physical it was. It's a bruiser conference, very physical conference, sometimes with a lot of big time power arms. So I think adding Tony as the new commissioner coming over from MLB and all the things he did to enhance that. He started MLB Network there, and he did the scheduling. So I think he brings a little pizzazz to the baseball part of the Big Ten. And then adding these four teams: Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, with a lot of pedigree and a lot of experience on the national stage. So I think it takes us global. I mean, you're kind of seeing what it's done in the other sports where it's just a great time for Big Ten baseball. So couldn't be more excited from a resource capability, but just the optics of it as well.
I get a lot of questions from parents and student athletes alike that really are trying to navigate this era of the portal and the JUCO and all the older, more physical athletes kind of moving around from different levels within college baseball. Is there a pathway for the high school athlete to find their way to college baseball, particularly at Maryland, or is the high school athlete basically going to be the low man on the totem pole, at least for the next few years as they go into the recruiting cycles?
Yeah, it's a great question. I just think guys need to be patient. I'm so glad they changed the rule. Things were just getting kind of out of control with kids in eighth and ninth grade committing that have no business doing that. So I think the change of the rule by nature will help everyone be a little bit more patient, understand where they are, and just be where their feet are. I mean, we're talking about eighth and ninth graders that haven't even got established in high school making college decisions. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to anybody.
Right.
So, I was a huge proponent of that and thankful for that. And hopefully now with the COVID year kind of working out, you do have the portal, but you know, I think kids that are high school age and they're looking for programs, just do their homework. Or do they have a tradition of development? Do they go more JUCO? Have they been portal heavy? I think just a parent doing their due diligence on the basics of that. Everybody's going to have turnover. Everybody's going to add people in the portal, but what is their development track record per se? What have they done? And there's some schools that will tell you, hey, we've done a great job in the JUCO route, and we do less in high school and more in the JUCO. And there's some that may say the portal, but I think it's on the parents and the players to kind of do their due diligence within that as well. And there's more information out there than ever for kids to be able to do that. I would recommend still, I know this sounds extremely old school, is attending a camp to your top three schools of your choice, because you get to meet the coaches, the staff, maybe some of the players are working the camp. And for me, since I've been at Maryland, 95% of the players that play at Maryland have been to a camp.
Oh,
So yeah, yeah, 95%.
wow.
We've always been huge on them coming here because essentially, before they changed the rule, that was the only way they could see campus, right? You couldn't give, especially now when you can't really do unofficials, when they're young. That's a way for them to see the campus, to go to camp, to meet the staff. So for me, we're still a proponent of the camps, and I think it also makes it realistic. If a kid says, "Hey, these are my top five schools," but four of them, aren't necessarily realistic, they would probably realize that if they went to a camp. So I'm not saying go to 10 or 20. I just think once you get down to it, if something you're interested in, your top three schools, you should make an attempt to go to a camp or visit there with the staff.
I don't think it's old school. I think going to camps offer parents and student athletes insights not only into the campus, but the coaching staff, the personalities, how the coaches instruct. Is there a flow? Is there a connection? Is there mutual interest, et cetera? So I think camps, by far and away, are the best value for parents and families with regard to college opportunities and options. I get this question a lot with regard to strength training, physicality, but I'd like to ask you, in today's current college baseball environment, would it be safe to say that athletes may be better served focusing a little bit more on their strength and their size and their speed as opposed to trying to play 12 months a year, camps, showcases, and just trying to play that tournament, circuit, for lack of a better term? Would it be better for them to be better prepared physically as they begin to get ready to enter into college?
Well, I'm going to go a little bit more old school on you. I'm definitely not a proponent of playing all year round. I don't think that makes much sense. I can't stand the way it is, the dynamic now. I don't like it. I don't think you need the specificity of training in a baseball manner the entire year. So I, someone who played three sports in high school, I love for our athletes to play different sports. So that would be my first choice: is get yourself and body exposed to different sports and different dialects. But in the same fashion, if they only play baseball, I think there's training that can be involved with that is also important for functional strength. I'm not going to go into size or mass because I don't necessarily believe in that. I believe in more in functional strength based on the athlete and what type of profile they have. Uh, but I definitely think there's too much baseball being played year round and it's too specific. So I would prefer different sports or being exposed to different training environments, for sure, rather than the all year round specificity.
Now, my last question really is your thought or opinion as to, do you think there will be a change within the Division One baseball landscape, similar to football, where we have a playoff division at Division One, or the Power Five schools will play one championship, and the other universities and conferences throughout Division One baseball will play for another championship? Do you envision that type of separation occurring based on the recent legislation that was passed?
I do think the Power Five is going to change drastically here in the next 18, 24 months. So I think it's going to change drastically. I would hate to see that change in baseball just because there's so much parity. And it's proven time and time again that a lot of different types of baseball teams can beat anyone, even at the top. So I wouldn't envision that happening in some sense in college baseball. I do see that happening more in other sports, probably. And I do think there's just going to be a lot of change and adaptability that's going to have to come throughout the landscape, whether it's paying players or the Power Five taking over or whatever it may be. I think there's just going to be, I think there's going to be every 6 to 12 months, you're going to hear something else that's going to change. But I just don't see how they could do that necessarily in baseball right now, just because it's such a sport of parity. And it's actually our sport is growing on the collegiate level, and the interest in it is rising. So maybe they would do something where you're playing more regional games. For instance, I know there's a lot of talk with that, just because for us it's like now we have to travel to UCLA or Washington or Oregon. How does that affect the student athlete and the travel? When you're playing 56 games, you're not playing once a week and be able to charter on a plane. So I think those little conversations may come into play more, where regionally scheduled stuff may take part, or take heed. But I'm hoping they don't change the overall kind of structure, just because I think our tournament and the way it is so great. I would love to see it expand a little bit. I've heard people talking about the playing games and adding 4 to 8 teams. I think that would be kind of cool too, like
Basketball.
basketball has done. I think there's plenty of room for that, and which would just help enhance and grow the game. But I'm hoping they kind of keep our tournament structure in place.
Coach Serrano usually joins me when we have these conversations, and today he had a recruiting situation and visit that he needed to attend to. But his last question always is, if you could make a change at any level of baseball, whether it be youth baseball, high school baseball, travel baseball, college baseball, professional baseball, you as an individual, not necessarily as the coach of the University of Maryland, would you have one particular change that you would like to see implemented or at least addressed to better the game as we move forward?
Well, maybe it's twofold answer. I think things need to be streamlined better. I think definitely at the youth level, the travel baseball kind of mantra and the style that happened more at the high school level 5 to 10 years ago is totally taken over at the youth level. and I just don't think it's healthy or productive. So I think of they're playing in the spring, they're playing in the summer, they're playing in the fall. I don't necessarily being super healthy. So I think we could streamline things more at the youth level for the players, and then um, also at the high school level where that's kind of getting out of control too. So um, I think at the college level, the one thing it's always not made a lot of sense is the difference in rules between NAIA and D1, D2, D3, JUCO. There's so many different rules, and that I think we could also do a better job probably streamlining that across the board as well. So the game is great. You asked me the question, so I'm trying to
Yeah.
find a few things here, especially at the youth level. I mean, we're always going to go back to, I don't care what it is health, and most concerned about these children having a great experience and in the greatest game alive. So health first for the younger guys, and any way we can grow the game throughout that with being healthy and performant is what's going to help us in the end. As you kind of see right now at the major league level and the college level, something is definitely broken with the way we've been doing, or with all the injuries. And everybody has a narrative for it, but the simple fact is it's happening, and we have more data and doctors and things that we've ever had, and it's happening. So we need to holistically look at things a little bit different.
Amen. I could not agree more with all of those, points and opinions. So, Matt, I want to say thank you, because I know this is the busy time of year. I don't know if you're heading out to Omaha and the coaches committees and things like that, but I know things are hectic. So I really appreciate you taking the few minutes out of your day to be able to talk with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
You're very, very welcome.
All proteins are not the same. I encourage you to choose a grass-fed whey protein. The cattle have a cleaner diet, grazing on natural grass, which is going to mean that it's going to have higher branched chain amino acids, also your omegas and your CLAs. I'm telling you, it matters from a recovery standpoint. Choose the best protein and you're going to see the best gains and the best recovery. I'm telling you, athletes, make a wise choice, because it matters what you put in your body.